It doesn't mean it's a cat girl. It could be just a weeb driving a tank.
It's tabletop time.
I'm Dave.
And I'm Jen.
And today I'm going to be making some more horrifying Traitor Guard, bringing back the Lost and the Damned for 2023.
Oh Lord Emperor, please deliver us. May we always win our battles. May we triumph with the night that will lead us to everlasting peace.
Ooh, smoky. What the hell is going on in here?
Oh, I'm just praying to my knight.
You're praying to your Forge World model.
Yeah, I mean, the video did really well, so I'm hoping that if I do a little prayer ceremony to the next video, we'll do super awesome.
Okay, well, have fun with that. I kind of feel like I need to make some cool models now.
Yeah,
or something.
Cool. All right, no worries. I'll just keep doing them now. Oh, Emperor, please, let me absolutely crush David's army.
So if Jen's awesome sister Knight video got 100,000 views, I was going to make a Traitor Knight, but it hasn't quite got there, which means I've kind of got to make the two-legged walker we've got at home. That's right, I'm making a Traitor Sentinel.
So I still have my Cadia stands box and lots of ideas, and to my surprise, a lot of you actually requested that I make a Traitor Sentinel. Now, as I start to look at the sprues and develop bigger models, there's actually a lot more space for me to play around with conversions. So fundamentally, what I'm going to do is build up the base, which is the legs to the torso, pretty much as the kit entails. But then I'm thinking some etched brass and some custom pieces to start to diverge once that core is built.
We don't usually do things 100% by the book. We definitely need to add our own flair to all of our custom models.
And my flair is usually heresy.
Or spiky bits.
When assembling the cockpit of the Sentinel, it became very clear that I had limited options in terms of how I would convert the pilot. The legs are sculpted into the seats, and the torso is built in such a way that it requires a special torso backplate, because that's the only piece that will fit seamlessly in the chair. They've kind of clipped the back of his body into the seat rather than making it a full torso that sits in a chair. Now, one of the most important steps at this stage of building any Traitor Guard model is carving the filthy Aquillas off the front of all of my vehicles.
That's heresy.
That's what you say every time, Jen.
I know.
Yeah, those damn loyalists, they're really one note. Now, when I started to look through bits, I had a chuckle as I found an old piece I had bought on a whim to basically annoy people. That is this sort of guardsman head that's a cat person. They have cat ears and cat teeth, and they're very anime. And I kind of loved it. It's such a meme. So, you know what? Felonid's a heresy, and this might be a heretic felonid with cat tail and head. Or maybe not. You know what? I'm actually going to take this two ways. I'm going to make it seriously using the gun arm. Yeah, this heretic is not satisfied with their autocannon. They're going to continue to shoot with their sidearm out the cockpit as well. But then I'm also going to leave the head blue tacked in, going with a more serious Traitor Guard head or the meme that is the cat person screeching. Why don't you decide in the comments if you want me to do cat person screeching or in fact just a regular traitor head?
I vote cat person.
I kind of also vote cat person.
I've got Jazza here and Jen because there's a line, I think, where it goes from being heresy to real heresy, and I got these bits a long time ago specifically to annoy people and make them, like, react. They're bits to create a reaction. I'm going to show you, and I want you to tell me if you think this is going too far or if you think it's amazing.
Oh, what is that?
It's
a cat.
It's an anime cat girl.
Oh, I mean, that's pretty chaos. Like,
Jen, what do you think?
This might be a little too much, but what if you have your cake and eat it too? Teeny tiny magnet. Swappable cat head.
Swappable cat head? You worried the head's too controversial?
What if the community voted on their favourite reveals, and if the cat version was one, then we make a cat army?
No, we're not making a cat army. I have 10 of these heads of various anime cat yans to piss people off.
Oh my god, they're like literally all anime cat girls.
I will make a squad of renegade cat people, not just girls, there'll be boys too, with tails.
Wow.
If people want me to.
I don't have an answer for that one. If you're doing that, you have to double down and fully commit. I want to see a tail on the Sentinel.
On the Sentinel? Oh my god.
Cat ears on the Sentinel. This is a tangent from what the original vision of this project was, but is that an upgrade?
I think it's heresy. I'll magnetize the head, and you can decide if the Nyan cat head stays in the Sentinel as a traitor. It doesn't mean it's a cat girl. It could be just a weeb driving a tank that has cat ears on their helmet.
So I sculpted up a quick cat tail because the meme, I shouldn't let it be a dream. And now I have some parts that I can substitute in if we decide to go the way of the Nyan cat. Now, when I was building this, I decided rule of cool is the critical factor, so I definitely added that chain sword in. I'm not sure if it's particularly effective as a melee weapon, but I also don't really care. The Reaper autocannon half of an old Defiler kit that I previously kitbashed into a new Defiler, I didn't actually use the Reaper autocannon. So one half of this is appropriately scaled for an autocannon, but looks about 1,000,000 times more chaosy. So I'm going to put that mounted higher up on the Sentinel chassis, leaving me space on the lower right side to do something a little bit interesting. And that something is mounting a Helldrake claw.
This claw was really interesting. I thought it could have looked like a harpoon at one point, but then once you started moving the little fingies around, it actually did start to look like a really cool claw.
I actually used 2 pieces of an Onega Dooncrawler set. Again, I've already used most of this kit for a conversion, so don't worry, I'm not destroying it. It went into the Defiler. I needed parts of the legs to basically give an extra joint to the claw to make it look functional. And do you see what I've done here, Jen?
No, not really.
If this is piloted by a cat person, this Sentinel has a claw.
Oh, well, that's clever.
Yeah, I know, right? This person's memeing too hard. So I really wanted to come up with a good silhouette for the claw. So I went for the chain blade down and the claw up to give a bit of motion to the kit. Once that was done, I could add the Reaper autocannon. And one of the things I did need to do for the Reaper autocannon was decide if I was going to cut off the ammunition belt and put an ammo box on, or actually try and utilize it. And in the end, I decided from almost every viewing angle, it would look really cool if the chain just bent under the chassis of the vehicle and disappeared underneath the Sentinel. We can imagine there's an ammo hopper built into this vehicle, but from every angle, it just looks really cool this way. For another chaosy touch, I wanted this pilot to have the head of the previous loyal Sentinel pilot skewered on a pike. So I just sliced off one of the parts of a Chaos Spiky Bit sprue and added that onto the Sentinel.
Metal.
And flesh. With all these pieces coming together, it was time to add the legendary etched brass onto the front, and I chose a nice 8-pointed Chaos Star as well as a numeric to identify the vehicle.
Do they still make this etched brass?
No, not for a long time, but there are third-party companies that produce similar if you go looking. Now, to complete the Warzone base, I used some of these awesome Gamer's Grass pre-made resin pieces, including sandbags and some drums, and I also added a spool of the old barbed wire from Citadel and shaped it so it appeared that the Sentinel was sort of walking through it and pulling it out of its mountings. I then covered the rest of the base in a mud technical so that could dry and I could paint it black to match the rest of my army later. I'm really happy with how these conversions are turning out, and I always like to have a good look at the model before you've primed it or painted it, just to see all the fun little parts that we used in its creation. Now, moving towards models larger than infantry, I decided it was time to crack out the airbrush, and for the armor, I did a gradient of greys that I usually do rather than just painting them by hand. This starts with a charcoal grey from Vallejo and moves up to Skavenblight Dinge and Storm Vermin Fur for the final highlights.
I noticed that some of the paints you use are kind of subtle in colour, but once you start layering them up, they look really good.
I have to scratch my leg. Okay, and now I'll respond. This army is a really dark paint scheme that's accentuated by a couple of pops of color, but the idea is it's meant to look really grungy and realistic. So I try and use similar colors that are tonally separate. I'm using subtle differences in shading and hue based on the material rather than saying, oh, well, they'll just paint the armor blue.
I think that's a really interesting tidbit. If you are looking to paint an army that is primarily grey, there are different types of grey that you can paint it.
For the majority of the underskeleton and also a lot of spot highlights, I just went in with trusty lead belcher. And once this was done, I could apply a liberal wash of Nuln oil to the whole model. Sandbags on the base were painted khaki, and then I came in with that teal color that I use as the basis for my Alpha Legion homage stripes on the army. It's a bit of an accent color for these fuel drums. The metallic areas were gently dry brushed in a silver just to give them a bit of pop once that wash had dried, and then I could move on to the next step. Now, something I find really keeps my army looking earthy is incorporating browns in them, and on infantry this is often in the form of leather straps or cowls and hoods. For vehicles, however, I actually use Warplock Bronze. It's an exceedingly dark brown metallic, but I think it looks really good to add this warmth into the models. Once large amounts of the model had those details painted, I could come in with some of the fine detail painting. The Chaos sigils and markings were painted in a beautiful, rich gold. I also painted the satchel bags, khaki, blue and grey, with some washes and highlights as well. Also applied a Liberator Gold dry brush onto all of the Warplock Bronze, then all of these similar brown toned areas could get a nice Agrax Earthshade wash. Once this wash was dry, I could come in and re-highlight a bunch of these areas, especially focusing on the blingy gold just to make it pop.
Those brass symbols look so good with that little bit of extra pop. I think they're really a feature piece on this particular model.
They definitely draw the eye and add a nice splash of colour for sure. The final touches on these models that really bring them together is definitely the sponging and weathering. And the first part of sponging I do is I make the markings, and I use a little bit of packing foam just to sponge on this paint. Once the initial color is down, I just move up through brighter greens in Scurvy Green, Foul Green, and then also that Temple Guard Blue maximum highlight. Once these markings are done, I can come in and start sponging brown all over the model. Areas that are brown, including on the drums on the ground, go on to become rust. And after I've used charred brown, I then come in with a mid-tone brown and then finish off with a bright orange rust, focused in the areas where I'd placed the maximum amount of brown in the earlier steps. This is an extremely simple rust and weathering technique, but one that works really well for batch painting large armies and is especially effective for armies on campaign, be they Imperial Guard or armies like the Death Guard that have a lot of weathering. With the majority of the model done, I could come in and finish off the detailed areas like the faces and hands, painting flesh tones and highlighting as I would any other model. So I used some dead flesh paints and then also some dried blood paints, browny reds that just made a lovely feature piece of this incredibly pale, decaying head.
Lovely.
Beautiful trophy to show off, and I'm sure it wouldn't smell at all. My Traitor army simply doesn't look right unless it's all brought together with some weathering pigment. So using some brown weathering pigment liberally on the base and rubbing it up on the underside of the model, we get the desired effect. And I guess it's time to take a look at our Traitor Sentinel.
Can't wait. Let's have a look.
Please don't step on it with your knight. It's so small.
Well, Jen, that was super fun getting to build my Sentinel, and I'm really starting to see my little Traitor army come together.
Yeah, it looks really, really good, but it's kind of small in comparison to my knight.
Yeah, well, I mean, we promised in your video, if that got 100,000 views, that I would make a Traitor/Dark Mechanicus knight that could really even the odds.
Yeah, and it's not too far off, so if you haven't seen that video, absolutely go give it a like and let's get it up there. I'm all done with my ceremony, so I'm gonna go paint up my knight.
You're painting it next week, right?
Yeah, well, good luck.
All right, no worries. Thanks, Jen. So so I thought she was crazy. But almost 100k views in like a week. My traders need a boost, everyone. Come on, help me out. We gotta get more traders. The Dark Gods. I actually think Jen, I think she might be onto something. I think maybe this whole dark ritual thing is maybe a little road I could go down. Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Ah, my darling patrons, you are amazing. I'm sorry for calling you darling patrons. You're all the best. Thank you so much for all your support. It's because of all of you we can do videos with crazy scope and silliness like this, and if you like what you see, consider signing up to our Patreon and joining up as part of our mini review. I'd like to give a special shout out to our new patrons, Mr. Sealy P, Jack Edwards, Ashley Gorin, Elaine Shukri, and Julius Billiter. It is wonderful to have you all along. Make sure you join the Discord, come and hang out with us, and definitely dive into that mini review every month. We'll see you all in the next one. Oh, also, sorry, the mini reviews at the end. The anime gag was too good to drop. Oh, and sorry, the patron scrolls at the very end of the video. The anime thing was too good to drop.